Hey everyone, I'm Scott Cunningham, aka Scottsy Business, and today we're going to be talking again about SoMe.social, all the various tokens that they have, how the platform has, progressed and what has changed since my previous review. It's basically a full-on scam at this point. I won't go as far as to say 100% that it is, but I'd say like 99%. They've done like 4 or 5 fundraisers at this point. We'll go through all of them. And they're currently starting a DAO, which will likely be raising funds and have a token. And they're in the process of, I believe there's like 53 or 54 days left for investing in them on Republic. The only reason that I'm doing this video is because they're still raising all these funds and essentially getting more money from more people that are probably going to lose it, because anyone who's really invested in SoMee's probably lost money, especially because once we finally switched over to Hive, the value just completely tanked and I lost like 98% of the value of what I had originally. They completely got rid of G-Bucks, so anything that you had there is just eliminated. They locked funds for months and months and months. There's a lot to get into, realistically. So let's start off by diving into my previous video, their response to that video, and then we'll dive into everything that's sort of new and more relevant for what is happening today. So with that being said, I will share my screen. No sponsors today. This is just a straight video. This is about a year ago when I made this. Essentially, the claims that I was most concerned about at the time, we'll go through some of these here. There was an ONG burn address, meaning that they had supposedly burned a large portion of their ONG, but all they'd really done is they just sent it to an address, which they claimed was of a hard wallet that was then a hardware wallet that was then destroyed, but there's no actual proof of that. That doesn't actually matter now because that was all essentially like phased out and they've moved over to Hive and did a token drop, but everyone lost like 99% of their value depending on when you sold. So yeah, they solved that, but I mean, you are the ones who paid for it, and the end of the day, almost anyone who invested money in anything SoMe related lost almost all of their funds. Aside, of course, from like insider people, the staff, people who had the ability to dump once they blocked access to wallets for people. The main thing that the only thing they really focused on for their response video was the web traffic. And they were saying, they were getting millions of hits, which was kind of misleading because it's like, okay, how many actual active users are there? They said 80,000 daily active users in the video response. However, on Republic, it only shows that they had 35,000 total users for that year. So it's hard to have 80,000 daily active users if your entire platform only has 35,000 users in total. Unless I was reading that wrong, even if it's only 35,000 daily active users on Republic, they're still lying about it. They're saying it's more than double of what they're actually reporting for their Republic thing. So here, let me pull up Republic. And the reason that this is so important is because they can't legally mislead investors when they're actually raising money for like an actual company, which is what this is supposed to be. So they have to give accurate information. And now we see here that the number of users was clearly not accurate before. Let's dive through everything that they're claiming here and see how accurate it really is, because I would argue that most of this is inaccurate, and that's an actual serious problem because technically this would be misleading investors and just be straight up illegal, right? So let's talk about it. And I'm not saying this is 100% the case, but based on what they're saying and based on what is actually true, it seems like that could actually be a legitimate thing. But we'll get to that. The other things that I was talking about were how like SoMe was full of spam. That's still kind of the case on SoMe, but anything related to Hive, it's sort of fixed because, you know, you'll get downvoted to oblivion on Hive for posting spam, and you won't make any money and it'll hurt your reputation and stuff. So that's sort of dealt with in a way. But that's not anything that SoMe did. That's just Hive. Since I made this video, not long after, they disabled access to everyone's funds and access to your actual wallet for about 10 months or so. When they did this response too, it was still inaccessible, which I thought was kind of funny. I was concerned about what was going to happen with G-Bucks, and we've now seen that they were simply just taken away from us and burned and destroyed, and there was really no compensation or anything like that. It was just completely removed. So I was 100% correct in my concerns there. They significantly overcharge people to buy their crypto, and then it gets locked in, and they would have to power down. And if they wanted to actually withdraw it and access it, they would have still had to pay and go through the KYC process. But then they also disabled wallets anyway, so it didn't even matter. And they were charging, I think it was like 60 to 70% above what the real price was. So they were claiming simply because you don't have to go through the process of just depositing it, that they're going to charge you like 60 to 70% more, which is just insane. You never see that. They had you KYC in order to be able to withdraw your funds. They said this was mandatory by law. They said there was no way around this. They said it had to happen. Now we know that was a lie because now there is no KYC and they're just using Hive. So what happened to all these mandatory laws? I don't know. You could previously block people to prevent them from downvoting you. That has been solved. That's really the only kind of fix that they made, but that was a very, very minor issue. The CEO did an honest response video. He originally disabled comments on the video, which I thought was funny, but then they eventually enabled comments. But the most important thing was really they just spent the whole time talking about the web traffic and not really addressing all of these really important issues. And yeah, so that was that. And that was the first chunk. That was just all of my previous coverage. This hasn't really gone into anything new. Their team has expanded a lot, and essentially with their team, they've always gone back onto saying, oh, well, our team is so great. We have so many celebrities coming in. We have so much stuff coming down the pipeline. Our people are, above questioning, and they always would rely on that. So they just keep adding to their team and getting more, popular people and names that can carry weight so that they can lean on those for legitimacy. When clearly this project is just really, really bad. And I would actually urge anyone who's involved in this project to cut their ties, denounce it, apologize, disclose the amount of money that you received for promoting this project, and call it a day. Because I'm not going to go after any of the influencers who deleted their stuff on SoMe, or, they previously promoted it and then they, got out of that. I'm not going to mention any of those people. I don't even really want to get into the influencer part of this because it's just going to cause me more trouble by showing you who is actually doing this stuff, because they're all way bigger than I am. They're all verified on Twitter. But I guess it's really more reason to have to point this out, that major players in the crypto influencer space have no problem giving you fantasies and telling you stuff. Like, they were saying all the things that the team was saying that never happened. So clearly they were just like reading scripts or whatever, and they weren't actually talking about stuff that actually existed. And then it never came to fruition. And they're still a part of the project. Their names are still used. Their likeness is still promoted, and they're still advisors on the project, and they're still in all of the content. So I'm mainly just going to be talking about the people who are still heavily leveraged and involved in the project. I'm not necessarily saying that they did this maliciously. Maybe they just didn't look into it enough. Whatever it happens to be, they do need to be highlighted and pointed out, because someone needs to watch this and then go to them and be like, hey, you need to stop this. Because I've reached out to most of these people, but like, it's not like I'm going to get responses. But either way, let's dive into it. So, SoMe was always saying how they were going to have like celebrities and all this stuff, and that's what's going to give them all this hype. But the reality is, for their testimonial / like their trailer or whatever for their project just has an array of lesser known like artists and actors. So, you know, not really all the stuff that they were claiming. I mean, Bitboy previously claimed that people were going to join the project that were actual celebrities and much more famous than he. Never happened. Crypto Crow is the first example here. He was heavily involved. He's still listed as an advisor, Jason Appleton. And, you know, he's saying it's going to make you rich and stuff and all this kind of thing. The interesting thing is that I'm not really too worried about pushback from these people, simply because they barely even use this platform. So it's clear that they're not really like serious about this platform, and they don't actually, you know, like it or whatever. Okay, so yeah, it's very interesting that all of these massive influencers haven't even been using the platform. Like, I use the platform more than they do, and I'm highly critical of the platform. That's the irony here. They were only really around and using the platform when they were promoting it. But, you know, as you can see, he hasn't been posting for like a very, very long time. His last post was in April, and these are really just posts from other people, so I guess March. So this is just one example, because I think it's interesting to point out when these people are saying that SoMee's like the biggest platform coming out, it's the best ever, you can earn so much money. I mean, if you watch their videos, right? And then you come on here and they're not even really using the platform. They're not really earning. They're not even posting. They themselves don't believe in this, because if they really were earning, you know, $50, $100 per post, then they would be using this every day, all day. But the reality was that they actually couldn't get those funds out of the platform. So this was all just like fake promotion. They were saying things that weren't really real. Yes, you were earning that money, but you couldn't actually access it. So they were heavily misleading people. And that was just one that was just one example with Crypto Crow. Or Jason Appleton, whichever you want to refer to him as. Elio Trades is another very well-known crypto influencer. And we have the same issue here where he promoted this. You know, clearly they did like a promotional thing. He did that little bit of promotion. And then you can see almost right around the exact same time he stopped using it as well. Yeah, you can see here, the last post he made, ironically, was his actual interview with SoMe, and that was back in 2020. So he made one single post, said it was amazing, and then just never used it again. It's very clear that these people didn't actually believe what they were saying. And again, I'm not so concerned about the influencers. I think this is a very, very small component of this. I think SoMe itself is what's really, really, really sketchy. But the fact that these influencers helped make it happen is the real concern. And that people love and trust and respect these influencers. So they kind of fell for all this stuff that they were promoting. And you can see a million different videos talking about how Elio Trades is involved with tons of sketchy projects, especially Super Farm. I don't know about Crypto Crow's past and what he's been involved in, but his involvement in with SoMe is definitely very concerning. Crypto Wendy O is always found alongside Bitboy and Crypto Crow promoting this project. She hasn't posted since October 2020. I previously did an interview with her, and you know, she seems like a nice person. But again, I'm not necessarily saying that everyone who was involved was malicious, and maybe they didn't know or whatever, but at the very least, I do need to highlight these so that people can let them know and hopefully that they go back and maybe delete their involvement or make an announcement that they're not really involved anymore or whatever, and distance themselves from the project. The worst of all, and this is the most concerning to me to really highlight because this is going to bring a lot of hate my way, but the reality is Bitboy was the biggest promoter of SoMe. He made his first video and he was talking about how like the team was an anonymous team and all this stuff. And then a year later, he admit that his lead researcher was actually always on the team of SoMe. So he was kind of just getting into this project because his lead researcher was involved. He didn't disclose that for over a year. And he never disclosed how much money he was ever actually paid by SoMe because he never discloses sponsorships. Although recently he was going through this huge scandal or whatever, and they said essentially that Bitboy is not going to be doing any more sponsorships, which is kind of funny with the timing of all this. But I did think that was interesting, especially since I'd never seen him, highlight a video and say that it was sponsored to begin with. But apparently they're stopping doing that. About 8 months ago, this is a video of them working with CardStarter to do the SoMe Sat launch, which is essentially the new iteration of the advertising token that they just got rid of and never compensated us for, G-Bucks. And then this whole thing fell through and nothing ever really came of this. So everyone who invested in CardStarter probably lost their money. And we'll get to that a little bit later. Right now, we're just focusing on the influencer portion of this. So Bitboy has been involved with CardStarter in the past as well. And there's a whole thread on by Zach XBT that talks about Bitboy, other influencers, CardStarter, things that they've all been involved with and all the sketchy stuff that's happened. They did a paid tour in 2020 talking to all these different influencers. And of course, none of them ever disclosed that they were paid, but it was very obvious they were just delivering, like they were just reading off of scripts because, again, a lot of these like actors and artists and stuff who they're getting to promote this project obviously don't have the knowledge about crypto to be investigating this and doing enough research to double check that the claims are actually valid. They're just being paid by this project to promote it. And while I was doing all this research, I found a lot of other stuff that kind of incriminates Bitboy with pumping, terrible projects and making people lose tons of money. But I won't get into any of that. I just left all that there from what I found to sort of add to this whole thing because I really don't know what Bitboy / Ben Armstrong's motive was or his intentions were. So I'm not going to go and say that, but because of how big he is, he was the main kind of person who brought this all together. He had the connection with CardStarter. I'm pretty sure he's the one who kind of like hosted a lot of this and likely brought on the other people like Crypto Crow and Wendy O. Because he's got a whole like influencer promotional group type thing. And again, I don't want to focus too much on the influencer portion because everything else is sketchy enough on its own, but it is important to highlight that these people have been promoting this project kind of shamelessly, and there's no like coming out and being like, oh, clearly like we promoted this thing with CardStarter, it didn't happen, sorry for all the people who invested or whatever, and they never address any of this stuff. So, until they do, I think this is warranted. Moving on to the CardStarter stuff. So let's actually take a look at the real thing so we're not making anything up here or getting something wrong. So CardStarter funded the SoMe Sat token here. And they had about 554 participants. It was private. It was an IDO. And that was completed. But then nothing ever came of that. So presumably everyone who invested lost all their funds, or they were just given worthless SAT tokens that you can't even actually sell or really trade on Uniswap. This was the original one-pager that explained everything. It has now been deleted, of course. This is the actual contract for SAT. So there is some some stuff going on. But if we go here and actually bring it up on Uniswap, SoMe advertising token. And no matter what I tried to trade with, like all these popular tokens, there was never any liquidity that I could actually trade with. Unless maybe just like one of these on this list, you know, actually is tradable. And I just, maybe there's an easier way to find that. But for the most part, no one's really buying or trading or selling this from what I can see. And it's not easy at all. So essentially, this was the second iteration of their advertising token, G-Bucks, which again was just completely eliminated with no compensation for holders. And they made this, and then really nothing came of this. ZachXBT also does a full thing on CardStarter and Star Launch Sol, which is their other project. Essentially, they create launch pads on different cryptocurrencies like Sol and Cardano, and they just kind of like, they boost up these projects and then they dump on the retail investors who get involved. And Bitboy and Rand Nooner were also highly involved in propping up CardStarter. You can sort of see how everything's tying together, how, you know, it's like Bitboy is kind of connected to all these things. CardStarter, SoMe, the lead researcher or the lead marketer from SoMe was his lead researcher. It's all kind of surrounding him in the middle. So again, I would say he probably knows a lot more about what's going on here than I'm going to say or going to claim. You can see here that the launches of Star and Cards, their corresponding cryptocurrencies, basically went the exact same way. That went way up, and then they just dumped, and they never came back. I mean, this happens with tons of different cryptocurrencies, but the idea here is that this was always going to be the case, and this is generally the case with everything that they launch. So be very, very wary of stuff like that. Now, this is the real important part that we need to dive into, is the Republic private fund raise, because this is what is currently still ongoing. And while the DAO is probably going to become a problem in the near future, this is the main way that people are going to be losing money to SoMe going forward. All the other stuff has already happened. This is in progress. That's why I felt it was so important to make this sort of final video to call this out and to bring awareness of this, because this is still going on. It is not over. This is still happening. So let's actually take a look at Republic and debunk everything that they've got listed here, because all of this is basically incorrect. SoMe pays people to be social. No, they do not. Currently, Hive pays you to be social, and SoMe doesn't reward you with anything at all. So this is all contingent on what is happening with Hive. Like, I wouldn't go on a Hive interface like PeakD and be like, PeakD is paying you for content and likes. It's like, Hive is, and PeakD is just an interface. Don't take credit for what something else is doing and pretend like you're doing it. The 2020 ARPU from 35,000 users. Now, it doesn't say daily active or total. I'm going to assume this is total, but even if this was daily active users, then they clearly lied in their previous videos that said it was like 90,000. But either way, this is those were incorrect, because presumably they're not allowed to lie on something like this, because you'd be misleading investors and that would be illegal. So presumably these are the actual stats, and the other stuff was incorrect. Their code is built, and again, this is also invalid because, again, they said 90,000 in 2020. A+ code built on AWS. AWS is Amazon, so it's not very decentralized if it's built on there. The only decentralized aspect of SoMe is Hive. So SoMe has always been centralized. They were disabling access to people's wallets. They could do anything they wanted, and they did. I also recall them banning someone's account and taking away their funds and then just keeping it for themselves, which I thought was kind of insane. They expect 5 million users to join SoMe in the next like 9 months or 10 months, which is impossible because there's no hype around SoMe. They barely got any users. And if these people are going to be actually earning, then that means they're also on Hive. And Hive has like 2.4 million users in total. And if they're claiming that they're going to double the user base of Hive in the next 10 months, that would be amazing, but that's impossible. Investors receive limited edition NFTs. That is meaningless. They will not be worth anything because SoMe is a terrible project. So that's my breakdown of that. A lot of the other stuff too that they have on here is outdated and incorrect. Let's find where they actually... So like, for example, this is inaccurate unless this is just based on Hive. But if they're saying that this is coming from SoMe, I'm pretty sure this might have previously been the case, but this is absolutely not the case now. And even if it was, this would just be for Hive, not SoMe. Yeah, like I don't think that is real at all, and I don't know how they get there. They previously had power-up packages that they sold to people. So a lot of the stuff that they're actually talking about here is not current. It's completely outdated. This was their old model, and this is not at all relevant. So all the stuff that they're advertising on this for investors, which is presumably illegal if you're misleading investors, is inaccurate and not currently relevant. They've also said that they've partnered with numerous platforms. I don't know what partnered means, but like just using Google Cloud or Amazon Web Services doesn't make you a partner. I think this claim is kind of insane, and a lot of this stuff is like sketchy. Like the fact that they've still got Cardano and CardStarter listed is kind of hilarious since that was a complete flop. I don't see at all how they're partnered with Library. I think a lot of this is just fluff, like IBM and all this stuff. I don't know how like real any of this is. I know they basically paid more than likely to get on Fox this one time, and she obviously had no idea what they were talking about. They were all just like paid talking points from what I could tell, because I can't claim that any of that is 100%. But here, this is perfect. This is what they used to do, which was basically very sketchy because they were massively overcharging people. But this is not even real anymore. You can't do any of this. So all this stuff that's like on their page talking about their business model and all these different things, none of this is even accurate, or like this doesn't exist. So if people are actually investing crazy money in this thing that they're promising, which isn't even real, it doesn't exist, these are not possible to buy, this is not how they're earning money. So as you can see here, their main source of revenue was for massively overcharging on power-ups, which I said was extremely unethical, but that was one of their main sources of revenue. In addition to that, they said eventually they will have ad share, which they came up with G-Bucks and then SAT, and now nothing. They've been talking about ad share for over 2 years. Nothing ever came of that. So that's not generating any revenue. And the last way that they were generating revenue was through verification. Ironically, when I first talked to them about this, they said it was simply a fee to pay for the third-party process that goes through this. But clearly, if they're making money from it, that isn't the case. But if the only way that they were making money was through verifications and power-up packages, then it's not really profitable. And now that they're on Hive, there is no more verification. So their only two ways of making money are now gone. The only reason that their revenue went up from 2020 to 2021 was simply because they disabled people's ability to withdraw their funds. And thus it appeared like they were growing and doing better, when really it was just people unable to exit. And thus it gave it looked like they were growing and doing better, but really it was essentially them preventing their users from being able to get out. But yeah, as you can see, their entire business model section for how they earned money all seems very sketchy at face value, and none of it is actually happening anymore. For quite some time, almost a year now, this has not been the case. I don't think SoMe is actually earning any money at this point. I think these will be their last money grabs, and then they will just call it a day, because they're not selling power-ups. Everything is done through Hive. There's no advertisements on their platform. G-Bucks and SAT both failed to launch advertising platforms on SoMe. So I don't know how much of this is actually relevant or up to date or accurate. And I think a lot of this is kind of misleading. I'm extremely confident that they're going to take this money and they're going to run, because they don't have a business model. They're not actually generating money. I think a lot of this stuff is very, very concerning. And if anything, and I don't even know if ad revenue was ever earned, so that's also kind of weird. I'm pretty sure they're just counting the money that they've earned from selling stuff to people, and just keep finding new ways to sell stuff to people and take more money from people. That's essentially everything for Republic. I did also think it was very interesting that the number of investors is eerily close to being the exact same, like 554, 558. It's probably like all the same people too, which I thought was kind of weird. They also did a GoFundMe where they raised $8,000 just asking for donations for some reason. They've basically gone and used every possible avenue for raising money and not actually providing a useful business model and producing revenue and actually following through on any of the things that they've ever claimed in the past. I mean, even 2 years ago, they were saying they were going to come out with an ad model and all this great stuff, and none of that ever happened. And that was what a lot of the influencers, they parroted those points, but then it never actually happened. So it wasn't like the influencers were talking about something that was actually in existence and real. They were talking about something that might happen. I think that's very, very dangerous to do as an influencer, because you're just trusting that this company is actually going to follow through. I only review things as they are. For example, I'm going to be doing a guide of Torum very soon, and I told them I would not do the review until they have the withdraw function enabled, and eventually they got it, and now I'm going to do the review. I would never do the review and then say, in the future, they will probably have a withdraw function, because I don't know if that's actually true. So I waited, and then now that it actually has that, I can make a video and actually cover it. Whereas all these influencers were always talking about what will happen and then never did. So very, very misleading as well. SoMe recently announced that they're going to be launching a DAO, which I believe will just be another way for them to get more money once the Republic thing is done. And so maybe this won't be their last ditch effort. It'll probably be the DAO. But I think with this money, they're probably getting ready to like do a big exit scam, because it's already kind of like they've already kind of done exit scams like multiple times, I would argue. But you could see here, they've only got like 10 people in their DAO. I mean, it is only like almost 2 months old, but it just seems like they're just finding more and more ways to siphon money from their potential like investors. And it's not really about investing in the platform. Like I just don't trust any of this. And I'm concerned for the people who are invested. Maybe there's a way for you to get out still. But this amount of money is nothing to scoff at. Like, this is a lot of money that people are going to be probably losing, because you're not going to get anything back for this. SoMe as an actual company is going to do the same as all of these other launches where the price just tanks, just like Cards and Stars. It'll probably do the exact same thing. I'd be very unsurprised. In fact, I would be very surprised if it did do well, and I would be very suspicious as to what's actually happening. We covered the GoFundMe raise. We've covered a lot of the stuff here. We've covered the DAO. So all in all, SoMe has done multiple exit scams, allegedly. And every time, and the only reason I say scams is because people are putting money in and then they're basically losing all their money. So whether or not you want to actually say it's a scam, the result is the same as if it were a scam. Like, you lose all your money. You invested in G-Bucks, or you had G-Bucks, they just deleted all of our G-Bucks. So they just took that away from you. You had ONG that you put into the SoMe platform and locked it up. They basically deleted all of that and then just airdropped you valueless Hive tokens. And even if you wanted to sell, they took down the access to being able to do so, and you were not able to access your wallet. And only a select few were anyways, who had paid $100 to KYC in order to do so. Again, I do want to re-highlight that they went on for years saying that KYC was required in order for people to get access to the funds. And it was really just a way for them to prevent people from actually getting their funds out, because we see now that they don't have KYC. So it was clearly never mandatory or required, or, the law was forcing them to have it, because they do not have it now. So that's clearly not the case. And just by joining Hive doesn't somehow, get them out of that questioning, that line of questioning. They charged people $100 for KYC for no reason at all. And those people wasted their money. And then they were supposed to be allowed to withdraw, but then they never could. So I honestly think that SoMe acted out of malice and not out of incompetence. All of their revenue models aren't really doing anything. It seems like all of this was just propped up by massive influencers and celebrities and people like Bitboy, who seems very deeply involved in this project. So it's hard to give him a pass on this. Again, I know this is going to bring a lot of flack my way by highlighting this and pointing out Bitboy, who is a major player in the space, and I am a very small fish. So I'll be unsurprised to see a lot of people saying like, oh, you're just going after Bitboy because it's like the thing to do or whatever, when he's very clearly swept up in this very sketchy situation and just never really addressed it or said anything or tried to distance himself. So I think that's very, very interesting. A lot of these people who ever claimed SoMe had really innovative new features, they never actually did. They were all just basically giving points that SoMe claimed they were going to do. So they were never talking on what was actually the case. They were clearly paid or likely paid to be talking about these claims. I do want to be clear. This isn't about me going after the influencers or people who promoted SoMe. I even had an interview with the CEO and sort of endorsed it originally. But and there's nothing wrong with that. But once you find out that SoMe is a terrible project, it's kind of your responsibility to go and notify people and maybe delete your original video or whatever it happens to be. I think people need to have a little bit more accountability for this and own up to what has actually happened, because a lot of people have lost money. I was in a sort of inner circle investing group in SoMe. They were all very, very concerned about their funds because they couldn't access them. But if they were ever to voice their opinions on the Telegram group, they would be shut down. So I was sort of speaking on their behalf. Eventually, they banned me from the group. And since then, the group has been deleted entirely. There's been a lot of covering up and, sort of covering up their tracks that SoMe has done in the past. All of my conversations with their marketing lead, he deleted, so there was no evidence of those conversations. Just a lot of covering up, which is, obviously very, very sketchy. Now, SoMe is just a Hive community, and it's not really offering you anything aside from just like another way to post to Hive. Whether you just use Hive or any community, or you decide to use SoMe, it generally doesn't make a difference at this point because everything is just on Hive. But I wouldn't really trust SoMe because they might find some other way to do something sketchy. It seems like right now that's mainly through Republic, and then probably next through their DAO. The scariest part about all of this is that these influencers were never really using the platform too. So like, that's why I do sort of have to highlight the influencers, even though it works against me, that they were barely really using the platform. So they obviously didn't really believe in the things that they were espousing. And that's very clear to see if you just take a look at their profiles. A quick check would, you would see that they didn't really do anything on there. SoMe offered massive rewards, but they weren't really real because you had to pay to access that. And even if you did pay, the wallets were disabled for many, many months. The longest streak was a 9-month streak, but I think there was times where it was disabled for 2 months, for 3 months, and for 4 months, on and off for about 2 years. During this time, they started the Republic fundraise when people had no access to their funds, which just seems insane that people would be okay with them doing another fundraise while people do not have current access to their funds. And we've seen that they've raised over $250,000 on Republic. And that's why I wanted to do this video, because this is still currently ongoing. This isn't just something that has already happened and then I'm reporting on it after the fact. There's still people getting involved and losing their money in this project, and that's why this is so important to highlight. I already mentioned I was in several groups previously. When I did verify, this is also interesting, and I KYC'd, they required that you used a fiat payment provider, so that I guess they had your information. You KYC'd in that sense, and you actually had to go through the actual KYC process. For some reason, I mean, I thought it was odd that they didn't accept crypto or ONG or anything like that. So I asked if we could pay in crypto. They said that was fine. And then for some reason, they said it didn't work. So they just let me do the process for free. And then during that process, it didn't work correctly. And then they just said, oh, that's fine. And then they just enabled it, which I thought, again, was very weird since they were saying KYC was so important. And they just kind of blamed their old dev team for all their projects. I was actually reached out to by someone who used to be on their team and invested heavily in the project. They'd like to remain anonymous because especially their old marketing lead was very toxic. They threatened to sue me for my previous video. But this person came out and essentially told me that the team was always using the devs as a scapegoat, and it was on purpose. It was always this case. It was set up to be this way. It was extremely malicious. They didn't really care about how they were handling users' funds, all these kinds of problems. And it's good to hear from someone from the actual team. Obviously, again, I can't expose their identity, for privacy and for safety. So it's important to mention that what SoMee's seemed to have done was the slow rug pull, where they were trying to do a rug pull, but as many times as possible over years and years and years. And it's actually amazing that they've been able to get this far, largely due to the fact that they've been able to ride off the coattails of celebrities and influencers and have that air of authority coming from those people. But a lot of those people don't really know much about crypto and can't really give you good information anyways. And the people who are in the crypto space were clearly paid and kind of complacent into what was actually happening, or they just didn't do their research or really look into it. Because to me, after I did a deep dive the first time, it was very clear to me that this was extremely sketchy. And, people just really need to do their due diligence. It seems like they've already done multiple exits and like rug pulls. Like I said, it's the slow rug pull. And it's impossible to really know how much was actually scammed or lost or whatever, because there's so many different conversions and different coins and different raises that they did, and we don't know what happened to the funds. And it's just very, very challenging. And they've deleted all their public groups and stuff like that, so it's harder to get access to the community as well. They're just making it very, very challenging to kind of follow up on this stuff and get more information. I've reached out to several of the influencers and gotten no comment back from any of them. This is my last video ever covering SoMe. I want to kind of, wash my hands of this project and be done with it. I tested it and continued to use it over the past 6 months to a year, because I'm always testing platforms, hoping that maybe if they actually follow through on what they claimed, or that they will get better or improve or do something. That never happened with SoMe, and I'm officially done using it. I'm not going to be making any more videos on this, most likely, unless something crazy happens. or they do another response or whatever. But for the most part, this is just a public service announcement to be aware of what's going on. I think the stuff they're doing on Republic and the money they're raising is very sketchy. I would be very weary of the DAO. And if they start raising money for that, or they launch tokens or whatever they happen to end up doing, I'd be very weary of all of that as well. So let me know. What do you guys think about all of this? What are your thoughts on SoMe? Do you think my previous video, like, I got anything wrong about? Do you think I got anything wrong in this video? Am I missing something? Is there another piece to this puzzle that I have not connected, so to speak? Again, I don't really want this to be about focusing on the influencers. If the main criticisms that I get for this video are that I didn't have enough evidence about the influencers and what they were doing maliciously, I think that can kind of all be tossed to the side, and you just look at what SoMe is doing on its own. That's enough to be wanting to stay clear of this project and just have nothing to do with it. I do think the influencer portion is important, more so to hold them accountable, but not as a important piece to this puzzle as to how bad SoMe actually is. I think that's very important to make clear, because I'm sure if any of these influencers get wind of this, their armies of followers will come in mass to dislike and attack this video or whatever and discredit it, essentially, because I'm a fairly small creator in comparison to these people who are involved in this project. That's everything, though, from me. Let me know what you guys think about all this in the comments below. If you did watch to the very end, I appreciate you for sticking through all the way. And make sure to let me know that you did by commenting hashtag #1ham in the comments below. And then that way I know you watched the whole video. Anyways, I'm Scott Cunningham, aka Scottsy Business, signing off. Cheers.